Heyo weebs, I'm Vel. It's the holiday season and it's the perfect time to talk about an anime that has a yearly tradition when Christmas time comes around. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite animes of all time, Toradora. I've never read the light novel that the series was originally based on, but the manga was one of the first mangas I've ever read back when I was a child, so with its yearly ritual happening, I decided to analyze how well the anime stands today, and how, if at all, it's aged since the anime's release 10 years ago. Personally, I never really even knew about the anime until a good 5 years after its initial release, since that was around the time I picked up watching anime heavily. There will definitely be some spoilers in here since, in order to do the series justice, I have to talk a bit more in depth, so keep that in mind. Toradora aired in fall of 2008. It follows Ryuji Takasu, a kind student with a fetish for cleaning and an unfortunate aggressive-looking face which usually intimidates the people around him that doesn't know about his true nature, causing him to have a reputation of being a thug or delinquent in the process. On the first day of school, he runs into Taiga Aisaka as she's putting a love letter in his bag, thinking that it belonged to his friend, Yusaku Kitamura. Taiga is basically the complete opposite of Takasu, with their similar reputations seeming to be the only common ground that they share. After some expected conflict regarding the love letter, feeling he should share in the embarrassment that she feels, Takasu ends up spilling the beans on the person he's in love with, her friend Minori Kushieda. They eventually drum up a deal where they try to help each other's love lives, and thus begins our story of the unlikely pair with dreams of dating the other's best friend. You quickly find out that our beloved main character's crushes have completely different personalities than what their appearances would lead you to believe. In contrast to our kind, normal, and misunderstood protagonists, they're very eccentric to the degree that you could probably call them crazy, and people would agree with you. This contrast of theirs works really well in many of the scenes of the series, especially when they're used to lighten some of the tension in the later episodes. Despite their goofy antics half the time, they are brought to be more serious when it's needed, and this is part of what makes the writing for Toradora so brilliant. Just about as fast as you discover the natures of their crushes, you're whisked away into some immediate character development which I still find amazing. It's really well done despite it happening within the second episode of the series. Other series I've watched that have done that usually fall short when it comes to that kind of early development. It creates a good reason to care for our pair of protagonists and puts the focus of the main story onto Takasu's love life. This works really well for the story since it gives you more knowledge about Takasu's personal life, while also slowly revealing Taiga's, and letting you get to know one of the best moms in a series I've ever seen, Takasu's airheaded mom, Yasuko. All the characters you'll deal with for most of the series are introduced fairly early, which allows them to develop a lot better while also not wasting any time furthering the plot, continuing to make things more interesting in the process. These early episodes are also used as a way to solidify the main group of characters before it moves on to the heavier plot. They focus mainly on letting the viewer understand the goals, personality, and various traits that they have, and give you plenty of time to get used to them being around. The introduction of Ami Kawashima, a model with an incredibly rotten personality and final character of the main group, happens around episode 5. Her introduction can be seen as rough since she's a character that constantly gets Taiga angry and causes her to butt heads every so often, but she gets a lot better as you watch. Shortly after she's introduced, she even has some character development and it makes her a lot more likable, and you get to understand a little of why she acts as rotten as she does. Ami quickly becomes part of the group, and she feels very integral to their dynamic with how she interacts with them. Story-wise, there's not a whole lot that happens between this introduction and the halfway point of the series. These next couple of episodes are mostly just there to make you care for the main group of characters and to show how well they interact between one another, bringing along with it some lighthearted fun. It serves as a way to set up the characters and to get you ready for one of the major plot pieces of the story, the high school cultural festival. While the first half of the anime was pretty lighthearted, this is where the story starts to get a little bit heavier. This particular arc within the story happens around a wrestling show for the Ohashi High School Cultural Festival, and the fact that this kind of thing was done for the main character's classroom makes it one of the parts that stands out really well within the series. I always thought that this was a pretty unique idea to go for to make a series pretty distinguishable. The festival is a big part of the plot, since one of the most important pieces of the story comes with it, learning a bit more about Taiga. With this, you find out about her family situation, while the series also shows you how Takasu really feels about his own family side of things and reveals his daddy issues. The focal point of these 3 special episodes is the drama involved around Takasu projecting his feelings upon Taiga for him not having a dad, thinking she'll feel the same way that he would if he ever got to meet his dad. Throughout these episodes, you get to see a kind of negative light upon Takasu, because he's constantly pushing these feelings onto our tiny tsundere, and practically everyone around him is telling him that this isn't right, that he's only doing it because he's jealous that she has a dad. The big problem with this is because Taiga's father is a good-for-nothing personality type who constantly promises big things, and he never follows through with any of these promises, ultimately disappointing her in the process and making it hard for her to trust him. This causes a pretty massive disconnect between our protagonists that ultimately hurt each other, since it's something that the other can't see the opposite's perspective on. This arc plays a good deal into showing how far Takasu is willing to go for Taiga, just to try to make her happy, and this sort of thing only gets better the more you watch. Because of the amazing developments within this arc, it's among my favorite parts in any romance series, and it's still as impactful as the first time I ever watched it. After the aftermath of that arc, Takasu returns to his resident mom status with Taiga and continues to get even closer to her. Our main characters look a little older after the cultural festival, and it's used to convey that, quite obviously, our characters are growing, both mentally and physically as the story goes on. It lets you know that you're about to get into the part where development never seems to stop, and lets you see that these kids are finally starting to grow up and become more mature. Soon enough, you find yourself in another important piece of development, all for a character that didn't really get a lot of attention in the first half of the series, our lovable student council vice president, Kitamura. He's the one main character within the entire series that feels like more of a side character than anything else. Kitamura was always there, but never really did much of anything rather than be his eccentric self and introduce us to Ami. It's really refreshing to see him truly feel like part of the group by making him a character with much more depth, but I always felt that he got the short end of the stick when compared to the other love interest of the main characters. This is also an arc that stands as a sort of turning point for some of the characters. After you get past that, you find out the reason why the fans of the series hold an annual tradition: the Christmas episodes. In my opinion, these episodes feel like they're the longest in the series, but not in a bad way. They're some of the more development-heavy parts of the series, and it builds up for some later scenes, since it's ultimately an arc that greatly affects Takasu. This arc in particular is where our oblivious protagonist starts questioning how he truly feels, and also holds some of my favorite scenes, such as the Christmas song and Sexy Santa Kitamura. Once you finish the Christmas episodes, you know you're in the final stretch of the anime, and it'll be over before you know it. As we get closer to the climax, we're slowly exposed to the true romance of the series. While it wasn't that heavy in its romance before, this is where it kicks it up a notch and we go on this amazing ride. Takasu and Taiga's feelings for each other finally come to light, which gives way for one of my favorite confessions of all time within the next arc. The ending is possibly the only part of the series that I could say lacks, but I use that very loosely. It can feel underwhelming in comparison to how amazing the rest of the series is, so that's really the only reason I say that. The final arc fills you in about Takasu's family, so you finally get a glimpse into what his family's really like, learning what has been there, but never talked about beforehand. There is one thing you could easily miss with the ending though. You'd think that the ending is open if you do not watch past the credits. If you miss that, it could totally change your perspective on the series. This series is honestly amazing, and I'm so happy that its manga was the second manga I've ever read. Toradora has brought me some really close friends and has given me a place in the anime community, and I can never forget it for that. The only other series that has torn this series from my number one's favorite spot is A Silent Voice. With other series within the romance genre, I tend to revisit them every so often, and some feel like they've aged like hell. But with Toradora, This anime truly feels timeless. The characters feel real and are completely likable, even within their own flaws. I think Takasu is the best written character out of the entire group, but I also feel Ami was the one that really grew the most, earning a good spot in my heart, despite her roughness. Yasuko is also one of the better supporting characters, and I feel the whole supportive mother kind of character is a greatly underappreciated role in the story. This series has some phenomenal voice acting within it, for both the original and dubbed versions, and it's really nice to see a pretty decent sized amount of people liking a dub for an anime. Toradora gets the highest possible rating that my rating system can give it. 5 enjoyment and 5 technical stars, otherwise known as a 5E 5-star. I can't wait to come back to this anime and see how well it's doing in another 10 years. Hopefully, the timeless nature of how realistic the characters are can help keep it afloat for that long, because I'd love to see this anime not age a day in that time frame. The only thing that I can see as inherently timed is the setup. It's a pretty cliched thing to do in a romance, but it works so well for this series. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I tried my best to go as in-depth as I could, because I really wanted to do justice for my second favorite series of all time. Did you think I did it justice? I'll see you weebs next time, and with that, I hope you all have a Merry Christmas for those of you that celebrate that, and have a great holiday season for the rest of you. See you around.
Do you think I'm sexy? Control yourself, Takasu.